So how are folks doing? Energy's good? Everyone's adequately caffeinated, got your sugar fixed for the afternoon? How are you enjoying the panels so far? Positives, thumbs ups, claps? Excellent, good. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you're having a good time. We've had some great conversations, and we're ending, I think, on a really exciting one, and that is that of green innovation. We've spent a lot of time today talking about solutions that are available to businesses, and I thought a great way to end a conference that we'd love to be forward-looking is to hear from those who are looking forward. And to that end, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing panel and our moderator, Bryan, to take it from here. But this panel was put together in collaboration with the Altitude Accelerator. You heard from Pam earlier today, and representative of some of the latest thinking and forward-looking organizations in the green and clean space, green and clean technology space, many of which were incubated and got their certs here in Brampton. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bryan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. So welcome everyone for coming today. I know this is the last session of the day, so hopefully we can bring some energy, be excited about the companies we have here in the panel, hear some things that are probably new, innovative, and make sure you have your questions for the end. So my name is Bryan Durate. I'm an entrepreneur in residence for Altitude Accelerator. I understand Pam already introduced Altitude earlier, but a brief, we're working with different companies, and usually in the earlier stages, to moving them farther along. Bringing those new startups and giving those the tools, the mentorship, and some of the guidance to move them forward in what they're doing. And my particular area is in the clean tech or in the environmental side. The previous panel, you heard about sustainability, and so that's my expertise. I've been in the energy industry for over 30 years. And in addition to being an entrepreneur in residence with Altitude Accelerator, we're building a venture fund for underrepresented founders in the climate tech, clean tech space. So that's a little bit about me, but I'll start putting it over to my fellow panelists here and get them to introduce themselves and say a little bit about their company before we dive into the questions. So I'll turn it to you, Behdad.
Yeah, thanks, Bryan. So hi, everyone. My name is Behdad Bahrami. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Edgecom Energy. And at Edgecom Energy, what we do is we have an energy management software platform where we help large energy consumers navigate this thing we call the energy transition. So it used to be that you would just get a bill and you would just pay that bill. Now there are peak programs, there are demand response programs, there's real-time pricing. There's so many dynamic factors that affect how a large energy consumer should really manage their energy consumption. And we have a software platform that enables us to do that super easily. Right now, we're in over 70 of Canada's largest industrial companies are using some of our solutions. We're in over 200 facilities throughout Ontario, Alberta. We also have some facilities in the US and also in Spain as well. You can ask me why Spain later. I have good food over there, that's why. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, and really the evolution of AI has allowed us to now really come to the conclusion that energy is something which is controllable, and analyzing all these diverse data sources, which used to be impossible before we had these LLM and generative AI solutions, are now becoming possible. And this generative AI is really going to allow us to optimize and save a lot of energy and reduce a lot of emissions for some of the largest industrial consumers.
Great, thank you, Behdad. Aaron, turning over to you. Give us a little bit about you and your company.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name is Aaron Guan, the founder and CEO of Neptune Nanotechnologies. So we are local here in Toronto, and what we do is we turn organic fishing waste. You think about the crab, shrimp, and lobster shells. We turn that into a really, really powerful nanomaterial. It's stronger than steel, lighter than plastic, and fully biodegradable. And it's used as almost like an additive ingredient to various applications. You can think about, for example, a lot of the paper-based packaging. You can add a little bit of our nanomaterial to make it twice as strong, water-resistant, completely get out of that soggy paper straw type of ball game. And it can also be used in industrial plastics, in structural applications like epoxies, composite materials, again, for that value proposition of improving strength, improving properties, but also on the flip side, significantly reducing the other toxic chemical additives that gets used and reducing VOC emissions. And I was just chatting with Bryan a few minutes ago. As of 2 weeks ago, we're actually in the Christmas tree fire suppression application, which is completely new to us. And it turns out that the nanomaterial, despite being water resistant in paper packaging, it's also fire resistant to artificial Christmas trees. So we are really excited to be here and excited to be on this panel.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Turn it over to you now, Keith.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Keith Cleland, one of the co-founders and CEO of Aquacell Energy. So at Aquacell, we are building giant batteries that use salt water as a way to store energy. We have come up with a process that uses existing equipment in the water treatment space and found a way to essentially reverse that process. You use electricity to treat salt water. We found a way to basically reverse that and use the charged salt water to power the electricity grid. This can help utilities get more, if you think about generation of electricity, you can get more solar power, more wind power onto the grid and provide consistent renewable power. We can also help with transporting that electricity around. So, with the electrification of everything, as people get more electric vehicles, more AI data centers, moving that electricity around is a huge issue for these utilities. So, they would have to spend a lot of money on what they call a substation as a way to get that electricity out. We can use these batteries to basically power the grid during peak times when everybody gets home from work and plugs in their electric vehicles, starts using ChatGPT. It causes a big surge in electricity usage. These batteries can then essentially power the electric grid, saving these utilities millions of dollars, which then has some significant affordability benefits for, now the general public's not having to spend subsidize these substations to the utilities. We're paying for a lot cheaper batteries. And then we get to avoid, say, lithium batteries and the safety, environmental, mining issues that come along with that. So, yeah, that's Aquacell in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you very much, Keith. You can see here from the companies, these are companies that came into Altitude in inception and have grown and become bigger and doing great things and at various scales. So looking in terms of the context of your company's work, right? And we heard earlier from the previous panel, and specifically Bruce, in terms of measuring what you're doing. How do you measure your impact of your business in terms from the environmental side? I'll start with you first, Keith.
So with the saltwater batteries, really it's about enabling more solar power, more wind power. So, there's two main things we're measuring. One is like the amount of CO2 that we can reduce by enabling these more solar and wind projects. And the other one is, right now the main battery technology being used is lithium batteries. So if we can displace the amount of lithium that needs to be mined, that's the other key way that we'll be measuring success from a sustainability lens as we scale up.
Thanks, Keith. How about you, Aaron?
For us, it's actually a very simple measure because our technology enables something fairly unique. So to give you one example, right, we see a lot of paper-based packaging around, the Tim Horton cups, for example. And you may think that those are recyclable, they're biodegradable. They're actually not, or at least very difficult to recycle, precisely because there's actually a plastic liner on the inside that's needed for water resistance. And what we do is we're basically providing an alternative. We replace that plastic lining with something that's fully biodegradable. And how we measure impact is the more packaging that we enable, the more we allow that to be biodegradable and recyclable versus the non-recyclable objects which ends up in the landfill. So that's a very easy metric for us to see and use. It's really by the amount of solid waste that we reduce. And then on the flip side, for the industrial chemicals that's used in plastics, it's almost a one-to-one replacement as well, right? 1% of a nanocrystal replaces so-and-so percentage of VOC emitting chemicals. And then we can do a one-to-one correlation as well. And then there's a third aspect as well, which is product enhancements and how our products manifest the enhancements mostly in terms of strength properties. If you make something stronger, you can also make something lighter as well if you don't need that much strength uplift. So considering all that packaging that gets shipped all over the world, right? A direct weight reduction correlates directly with a CO2 reduction due to that weight advantage. So there are three ways that we track: solid waste reduction, VOC emissions, and the carbon that we prevent from being emitted.
Great. Those are some very clear examples of what you're doing. But for your business, you said you're in over 200 businesses across around the world, including Spain because of the great food.
Including Spain, yes.
How do you measure the impact that your business is having?
Yeah. So we look at it as a metric called megawatts served. So that basically means the total amount of customers' load that we are affecting. So if you're an industrial facility, you're maybe using 1 megawatt, 2 megawatts at your peak. And that peak time, specifically in Ontario, but in most grids worldwide, that peak time is the time when the grid is the dirtiest, right? So in Ontario, we have primarily nuclear power, we have hydro, and we generally have solar, wind, we generally have clean energy. But during the times in the summer where everyone's coming home using ChatGPT, as you said, cooking, charging their EVs, that's the time and turning on their air conditioning, that's the time in the summer when we have crazy peaks. And those crazy peak times are when the grid is the dirtiest. So what our technology does is it enables these facilities to understand when those times are, reduce their load, or dispatch their battery systems during that time, and that in turn offsets their Scope 2 emissions from the grid. There's another thing that we do, which is we enable real-time energy visibility in these facilities. So once you start to understand what your chillers, what your boilers, what different energy equipment is doing, and you start receiving alarms and analysis of what's happening there, you start to upgrade your energy efficiency as well. So we enable visibility, we enable peak demand reduction, both of those reduce your Scope 2 emissions, and we quantify that on an annual basis.
Great, thank you very much for that. I mean, that's very clearly, where you're having an impact, how you're making a difference, and even in today's environment where we're seeing some pushback from some of these green initiatives and ESG, clearly tying it to the economic benefits for those companies, it's worthwhile to them. And so I'm glad to see that there's things there that keep progressing it. Looking, all of you have had technologies, you've all come from a small scale, scaling it, some still looking to even to scale to higher levels. What has been some of those biggest barriers that you've faced in terms of scaling your technology? And I'll start with you, Aaron. You've got this new novel nanotechnology coming from shell waste, right? What are those barriers to be able to scale that technology?
That's a very loaded question, especially for physical technologies like ours that's born really from university lab scale. So quite a bit of challenges. So as you imagine, for a lab scale technology, nanomaterial, which is defined as a material that's 10,000 times smaller than the width of human hair, right? Imagine how little that you can produce in a beaker in a lab scale setting, right? So there is a lot of scaling technology barrier for us to get to the next step, which we are in right now. We're out of the lab, we're in the kilogram scale pilot, but there's furthermore, right? So other than the technology itself, which really does take a very, very technical expert team with experience, on the other side is really the capital intensive nature of the technology, right? So we've seen a lot of government incentives, we've seen contract piloting facilities being built, but even to us, we can leverage some of that. We already see a great trend in that, but a lot of the capital expenditure for a novel technology we cannot get away with. So the capital environment is also a major challenge in Canada, especially as Canadians, right? We are very environmentally conscious, but we're also quite risk averse from an investing perspective. So it is something that we're facing on a daily basis as we are growing and scaling. So yeah, it's very much hybrid. The technology challenge that we can solve, the bigger environment, the bigger from the investing side, the investing climate side, it's something that it's definitely worth more attention from an ecosystem perspective, and it's something that needs to be looked at and having, frankly, more resources thrown at it.
Thank you for that answer. I mean, and yeah, it's a common theme that's across, Canada's entire startup ecosystem, being able to get enough investment in there to allow you to advance. But you look at companies like yourself and you're saying, look at all the areas we can do. We can do Tim Hortons cups. We can go into fire suppression for Christmas trees. So there's some very key customer base for your product, and so, it shouldn't be that risky an environment. So I'm glad you're pointing it out, because I mean, it is something that we need more investment into. Turn over to you, Behdad. You know, you've got 200 customers worldwide here. You know, you've brought the business to this level. What are some of the barriers you see going forward to be able to scale that even further?
I think one of the big problems in energy generally is the regulatory landscape, right? So I think the last panel was touching on this a little bit. You have different rules in Europe than you have in the US or you have in Canada. So every country has their own subset of rules. Even for us, one level that takes it more complicated is in the US, there's over 4,000 utility companies. Each of these utility companies has their own pricing scheme, their own mechanism, the way they charge energy peaks versus the way they charge per kilowatt hour. So navigating that has been a tremendous challenge. Luckily here in Ontario, it's the ISO who kind of oversees everything. But when you go into different regions, it's really a patchwork of different pricing models, different incentive programs, and it's really hard wrapping your head around that. Now, luckily, with some of these Gen AI tools, that's becoming easier and easier to parse that data, understand that data, and build solutions for each of those regions. But it's the regulations and the regionality on energy that's making it difficult to scale. But I think there are going to be solutions coming for that. There's a lot of stuff we're working on, but there's also a lot of partners that are working on some innovative solutions there.
So, I mean, thank you for that. I mean, I'm actually going to jump ahead to one of the questions since you brought it up already. If you could wave a magic wand and change one policy or regulation to accelerate that green innovation in Canada, you know, what would it be?
I think in Canada, we sort of have to we have to have the right regulations, but we don't want to over-regulate ourselves either, right? So, I mean, energy and electricity specifically is highly regulated. It has to be. Safety is a concern, and it's a common good that we need to have. So it is very highly regulated, but I think having the right level of regulation to incentivize the market to move in the right direction, but then not over-regulating innovation, right? So I'll give you an example. There's a company based in Austin, and what they're doing is they're just going to all residential energy consumers. They're installing a battery system for them, and they're saying, it's called base power, right? We'll install a battery system for you, and your electricity is going to be 12 cents a kilowatt hour. That's it. That's all you need to do. Sign this contract. It's going to be 12 cents a kilowatt hour. We'll take care of the battery. We'll take care of the capital costs. We'll take care of your bills. You can't do that in Ontario, right? You just can't do that. So I think the regulations have to have that light level of protecting the consumer, but also enabling innovation to happen. So if I had a magic wand, that's...
Yeah, you are talking a tricky area, though.
Yeah.
That balance between, I mean, because here in Canada, some of our regulations have protected us in certain areas, but then it can stifle innovation at times, especially I think one of the bigger challenges is how long it takes to implement the regulation and enact it. So some very good points. Going back to scaling, turning back to you, Keith. You know, your technology, you've gone beyond the lab scale. You're about to implement some significant pilot projects out there. What are the challenges you're facing to be able to scale your technologies to the next level?
Yeah, so we're in a similar boat because it's a hardware technology. It's not cheap to scale it up. We do have a benefit though that because we're able to purchase this equipment from another industry, we're able to scale it up and demonstrate that the technology works quite quickly. It's just once we get into scaling into commercial units, that becomes very expensive if we're not the ones doing the manufacturing. So that's a bit of a challenge that we see overcoming. And like, when do we invest in that manufacturing facility? What's the right size of pilots that we need to scale up to? And we've got a couple in the pipeline in Alberta that we're excited about. And then even just finding people who are willing to do these pilot projects. It's, there are some good programs out there for utilities to be able to pilot new technologies. But then, we want to ensure that there's a commitment after those pilot projects. We don't want to just be piloting for the sake of piloting. We'd love to demonstrate that the technology works. But, having that buy-in to commit to, it's a new technology, and of course there's reasons to be risk averse, but that's how we can really bring innovation forward, is to be able to committing to pilot and try these new technologies. Even going back to your point around that magic wand, I think that the regulations and incentives out there right now in the utility space, kind of echoing what you're saying, it's really built for what how the grids have been operated for the past 50 years, and the regulations are really built around that. So if we can find ways to incentivize utilities to take risks and be able to, for example, energy storage right now can't be included in the, say, list of assets that a utility can operate. It depends on what jurisdiction you're in, but that's generally that's how they can move forward and grow their grid so quickly. But if you can't, if something like a new technology is excluded from that list, they're not really incentivized to try to make purchasing decisions to innovate. So.
Thank you for that. I mean, that is following up and covering off those two areas and some of the challenges in utilities. You talk about working with utilities and the regulations facing that. Bringing that, what you're doing where you're looking to scale up your facilities. Aaron, you're looking to scale up yours. What sort of partnerships and collaborations will you consider key? And, I'm putting this out there right now because, we're sitting here at the Brampton Board of Trade. Both are looking to do advancement, some more manufacturing. Brampton may be a good option for you. We're here with one of the partner sponsors is Electra. There's a utility that would be good. So, where do those partnerships, how do they play a key role? I'll start off with you, Aaron. How do those partnerships play a key role, and how could they be better collaborators to allow you to accelerate what you're doing?
That is really a fantastic question, and really from my company's perspective, we view it of a few different things, right? So when we are talking about scaling a technology, right, there's a demand side, right? How much of a pilot do we need with whatever customer? So really an ecosystem that really supports that customer discovery, that's able to connect, for example, the Brampton Board of Trade can potentially connect a startup with a more established industry to create the opportunity to pilot, to scale, is first a fantastic one. And the second is really about facility and construction, right? So when we're talking about scaling a hardware technology, a new nanomaterial, there are several different ways to do it. You can outsource it, you can find a manufacturing partner, or you can scale yourself by building a facility. And for us, due to the novelness of the technology, the uniqueness of the technology, we have to do some of that scaling on our own, right? So having the right facility and have a really efficient construction and permitting process is really going to really support that innovation. And then on the flip side, right, we're talking about investments in clean technology. So having centralized hubs, like a research hub that has a lot of the basic R&D resources, small validation resources that have a bunch of equipment, lab scale that's common, that can be shared among a number of startups is going to be really helpful. So very much a hybrid approach where a lot of the aspects of the ecosystem can come together. But we definitely, as a startup, right, we would prefer to have all the help that we can get so we can grow faster.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm throwing it back again to you, Keith, for a moment. I haven't forgotten about you, Behdad. I'll get back to you. I want to pick up on this partnerships and so on. I know you're doing some stuff. You're doing some pilots out in Alberta. What could we do here in Ontario to entice you back? What sort of partnerships could be here to help you build and grow your business more here?
That was a great question. So I might actually pick up where Aaron left off, was having those research hubs that different companies can access. That's something we're currently getting with two of the major colleges in Alberta, where they have, for example, one of them at NAIT is the college. They have a dedicated 50 kilowatt microgrid that we can test our battery on before deploying it to electricity grids. And just across the hall from that is a center that can automate our battery for us, develop the control systems. We're actually contracting them out to be able to do this work for us. And because we're collaborating with these colleges, we can get some significant, they're actually able to apply for grants that we were one of the contributors on. So we get significant bang for our buck in terms of working with these research centers. There's a whole other college that's going to be doing a R&D scale up for our battery technology in Calgary. And they've got millions of dollars of flow battery research equipment. This is at SAIT in Calgary. So these types of research hubs are like significant in terms of allowing us to scale up. You know, we have a core team of 4, but if you count the engineers and the technicians, researchers we're collaborating with at these centers, it's closer to 10 or 15 full-time employees depending on what project we're working on. So having those supports, you know, if there was something like that in Ontario, that's and don't get me wrong, I still, like, you know, I'm here once a month. Like, we're supported by the Velocity Incubator, Altitude Accelerator, and a number of others. So having those key supports is helpful. I think also on the customer partnerships, that's another area that if there are like dedicated pilot programs that we can explore, that would be a huge benefit of being able to work with you know, utilities, industrial facilities, whatever it happens to be. That's a good reason to move. I don't know if we move back. Maybe we'd spread out the team, but yeah.
Thank you for that. I mean, the key thing I was hearing from both of you is that if there was a way to get that research center, you know, and centralize that. I mean, and I know cities like Brampton are looking for what they can do to attract businesses and so on. So the more they can centralize, as you said, making that easy access to customers would make your lives easier and make it easier for startups such as yourself to be able to scale and grow your technologies. Back to you, Behdad. Like, what are some of the key partnerships and collaborations? I know you're doing some work with utilities out there and different businesses. What are some other key collaborations that you see that are key for your business?
So for us, I mean, we're an energy software company, right? So the last thing that we want to do is get involved with too much hardware or get involved with designing and installing battery systems. So there's experts in each area of the field, and there's enough room for everybody to play at their core strength. So for us, I mean, it's been finding the right technology vendors, finding the right battery companies that have the right solutions, finding the right clients that are very focused on energy innovation and finding ways that they want to reduce their costs and reduce their emissions. So we really sit in the middle of that whole ecosystem of the utilities want to enable these programs. The utilities at the end of the day want an efficient grid, right? They have nothing against an efficient grid. It's just the regulations and the nature of their business makes that very difficult. So a utility might come out with a non-wires alternative program or a demand response program, but they don't have the skill set to take that program and now roll it out across hundreds of industrial sites. They don't have the software to be able to do that. So really we sit at the core between the utilities, the large energy consumers, the technology providers, and we have to have these partners to give us the strength that we need to be able to actually deliver solutions to our clients. And in energy especially, I think partnerships are critical. And I think, you know, the technology is evolving so fast and the regulations are evolving so fast, but consumers are left behind. So we need to be thinking in that partnership approach with everybody who's involved and helping them kind of move the whole industry forward. So partnerships are critical for us, and without that, you know, there'd be nothing to really manage, right? So we're sitting in the middle using our software to orchestrate everything, but partners are the ones that are actually putting the physical assets in place.
I mean, that's so key. And I mean, building off of something what you're saying there, I see there probably could be an opportunity going forward for companies like yourself to say they're sitting in that middle, probably need to bring in places like front of the Ontario Energy Board. I mean, haven't been in front of them very many times. They sort of see the utility, they may see the proponent or someone going against it in that particular project, but I don't know if they get enough of that. Here's the innovation, this is what's doing, so they can shape policies and regulations going into the future. So it's something that probably worthwhile exploring.
I think the problem is the OEB, for example. Right? Even you mentioned like in Calgary, right? I think most of the centers and most of the kind of groups that exist in Ontario, they almost have like a closed door policy as opposed to an open door policy. So we were at Greentown Labs in Boston about 2 years ago, where people from the utilities just come and hang out there. People from utilities, people from the ISO, people from and battery company, they just come and hang out. So they've created this sort of ecosystem. But here in Ontario, I think it's still, I can't just, you know, have a meeting with the ISO, right? It's there has to be like it's very regulated stakeholder advisory sessions. It's very like by the book, right?
Right.
So I think just opening that up a little bit and having more forums like this where people from the ISO, people from the utilities, people from technology companies are having these open, frank conversations and understanding and seeing the problem from the other side of the equation, I think that would really help. So we have these centers, but they're closed doors kind of, right?
I mean, that's great. I mean, yeah, it's changing, you know, it's getting a little bit away. I think that conservative mindset we have, a little bit more cautious, you know, we need to be a little bit more open. I mean, the same way, you know, you look at places like Toronto, Brampton, and so on, they're very welcoming to the rest of the world. We need to be welcoming when we're all here and working together. You brought up a point earlier about AI, and that's a key part of your business, you know, and we've seen major changes with these large language models, and, you know, AI has been here for a long time, but, you know, it's sort of more than everyone's talk today. Can you take us through a recent project, how AI has been used in action inside of your company?
Yeah, so one of the solutions that we provide is a load scheduling tool for clients. And in the past, we had to build these models specifically for each facility that we wanted to participate in. So we would have to get data scientists to understand, okay, this is a cement plant, this is a steel plant, this is an auto parts manufacturer. So there was a lot of manual software engineering that had to happen to tweak the services for specific customers. Now with the generative AI, it's basically a natural language conversation that the operator in the plant can have. So they tell the software, I can't do this thing you're asking me today because of these reasons. Or my forklifts need to charge at 20 kilowatts between this hour and this hour. And the software is able to analyze that and really learn. So it is really taking that co-pilot kind of mentality where it's an agent that's sitting there next to the operator speaking in not Python, speaking in English,
Right.
and understanding their constraints and their issues. So I think Gen AI is going to open a lot of opportunities for customization of software without someone actually sitting there and designing that software, right? You kind of just have to guide it in the right direction, and that's going to enable a lot of scalability for energy management solutions.
I mean, that's very key. I mean, having been, you know, looked in industry, working in the corporate world before, I mean, seen all these new computer technologies come in, and the biggest challenge has always been not the technology themselves, but getting people to use it. Now what you're saying, you know, with using AI and using these open models and tools, it just makes that user interface easier and probably reduces that learning curve to get that software adopted. So it's very cool to see. Aaron, you know, looking at your coating technology and how, you know, it's improving efficiency, reducing emissions, you know, you mentioned this new industry with the Christmas trees in terms of being fire suppression in that. What are some other industries that you're seeing where's the most uptake in, you know, that's sort of that demand for what you're putting out there?
That's a really fantastic question, and we really have to probably scale back and look at the sustainability industry and how my experience is speaking to customers, right? When we look at sustainability, right, used to be all the rage, but really from our perspective and from our in-depth customer engagement, right, sustainability is still on top of mind, but it cannot be the only selling feature of your product, right? Typically, when we look at a product that's successful, it has to hit at least two of the three dimensions. I'm talking about sustainability, performance, and cost, right? A successful product cannot be sustainability alone. It needs to bring additional benefit. Is it bringing additional dollar amount savings to the bottom line, or is it improving performance? A wildly successful example will be one that is hitting all three aspects at the same time. So a very good uptake that we're seeing a lot of traction really is in packaging, right? The packaging trend that you see right now, the deplasticization, the transition towards paper, is a really sustainability-driven topic. But out of all the sustainability solutions out there, what gets adopted is the one that is really providing a real performance benefit as well as cost-saving benefit. So for us, right, we're driving a lot of traction in the packaging side precisely because that we are really solving performance first, the soggy paper straw, for example, the barrier properties, but it's also a sustainable, fully biodegradable material. And very much the same thought gets echoed across the other industries that we participate in, right? There has to be a functionality first, and then sustainability is a nice to have on top, right? It's never enough alone.
And just building off of that a little bit, where would you say that fits in from a financial perspective? Because there is, we heard this in the previous panel that it's sort of a myth, but I'd love to get your take on, that sustainability has to cost more,
That's absolutely not true, and that's really a false statement, right? We think about sustainability costing more, and there is. It's mostly because of the legacy. It's mostly because of the technology that we're used to, the establishment of the petrochemical industry, for example, right? It's that economy of scale, and that's how we are used to do this business for multiple decades at a time. That's the factor that's driving the existing costs down, right? So if you adapt a new solution, it will, of course, immediately cost more, quite simply because the scale isn't there, right? But with more investments, with more scalability, there's absolutely nothing that's fundamental to a sustainable solution that says it has to cost more. And with our technology, it actually costs less. Guess what raw material we use, right? It's really the waste lobster shells that you guys toss out after dinner, right? So with sufficient scaling, with sufficient performance benefit, right, we're really driving down cost. And then that's really just only one aspect. And the other aspect is really the performance of your solution, right? A higher performing solution is more efficient. And if you take a lifetime life cycle lens to that solution, right, you see that you're deriving a huge amount of benefit, both from a cost perspective and a performance perspective and a sustainability perspective.
Thank you. I mean, very, very clear, example, again, talking to, you don't have, sustainability doesn't have to cost you money, and the benefits you get out of it are probably going to reduce that overall. So turning back over to you, Keith, your saltwater flow batteries are designed for long duration energy storage, and they're a cost-effective alternative to lithium-ion batteries, probably in certain contexts and so on. So if you can elaborate on that, in terms of how your technology addresses the challenges of energy storage, and where is it cost effective, and why does it make sense for utilities or industries to use your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to cost, like I agree with a lot of what Aaron's saying, because salt water is inherently cheaper than something like lithium. Where it really does make sense, though, is getting into that long duration energy storage piece. So if we're talking about, say, 12 hours, even 8 hours up to days worth of continuous power to the grid, that's when it starts to make sense to use a saltwater battery, because if you think of what expanding a lithium battery might look like, if you have a 4-hour battery and you wanted to go to 8 hours, you'd be doubling the amount of lithium batteries you have. With a saltwater flow battery, because we have the battery stack is one unit, and then the saltwater tanks are a separate unit. So to get, the battery part is the expensive part. The saltwater, if we want to go from, say, 8 hours to 16 hours, we're doubling the size of our saltwater tanks, which is like a 5% increase on the total system costs. So that's where it really starts to make sense, is having like longer duration energy storage. And, I think that when it comes to like this cost versus sustainability, I would almost argue that like you can't have sustainability unless it costs less. Like you really need to be thinking about it from like a cost perspective first. Like and that's one of the reasons we chose saltwater, because we knew we could get both the low cost and the sustainability aspects. But what's really going to drive the adoption of this technology, I'm very enthusiastic about the sustainable aspects, but I'm convinced it's going to be the low cost of saltwater is what's really going to drive this adoption, because that's at the end of the day, like economics are going to rule over this, and then it's just a matter of getting to that economy of scale where we can mass produce these in a cost-effective way.
So in essence, it just makes business sense to do this, and the sustainability benefits are on top of it.
Absolutely.
To that. Back to you, Behdad. Like, if looking at this particular audience that we have here, and being here at the Brampton Board of Trade, and the various partners, in order to move green innovation forward, what would be specifically helpful for your company? What would be the ask?
I think for us, it really just comes down to that ecosystem that we talked about a little bit earlier. So, we've been part of the Center for Urban Energy at Ryerson. We've been part of a lot of different groups, but I think maybe a place where we can really share ideas openly and freely and really talk to experts from all sides of the problem, I think would be something that would be very, very helpful for us, right? So something like this forum is obviously amazing, and there's different participants from different sides of the sustainability equation. But I think having more ecosystem partners and getting that involvement from, again, utilities, LDCs, ISOs, solar panel producers, having more of these open conversations and discussing really the tough challenges that we face around regulations, pricing, and all those kinds of things, I think that would really, really help us. And I'm sure it's something that you guys are working on.
Nice. Same question to you, Aaron.
Very much the same thought, right? Having a organization, having an ecosystem that really just come out, meet, be gathered under one roof and just network and can frankly talk about a lot of these things in a very casual manner is going to be really, really helpful to really spark ideas, spark imagination, and really talk through some of the problems and challenges that we come from different perspective, right? It could be government perspective, could be a startup perspective, right? Everyone has different thought, and we wanted to see the thought process within the other person's shoes. And then the second part is on the regulation side, right? We're not asking for deregulation, but we're asking for a more efficient and more transparent openness to that regulation. For example, if we're looking for a facility built, right, let's get that permitting process accelerated. We just want to build and we want to scale, and we don't necessarily want to having certain setbacks, right? So of course we understand that startups and certain other organizations work on a slightly different time scale, and then we probably want to find a way for that different time scale, that pace to match a little bit better.
Thank you. Over to you now, Keith.
Yeah, I think one of the main ways is like partnerships between startups and larger organizations. I think that's very key in terms of getting, say, some initial customer validation and pilot projects off the ground. Like having conversations with some scaling technologies, and if there's application in the business, being able to work with different startups on pilot projects, that can be make or break for a lot of different startups. It's critical to be getting, pilot projects off the ground with meaningful commitments, and like, don't commit if you don't know if it's going to work. But like, if through a piloting project you're able to hit certain criteria, I think that's really meaningful, not only in terms of deploying new technologies, but also getting new technologies funded. That's something that a lot of investors will be looking for, is like, that's great that we can get a pilot project, but is there commitments to be able to scale beyond just an initial pilot? So yeah, really that partnership between large organizations and startups, I think it's a win-win, right? If there's benefits for the organizations to have these technologies scaled up, and then if it brings a startup a pathway to scale, it can be mutually beneficial.
Thank you. So, I mean, hearing a common theme here, we're talking about open forums for discussion, opportunities for industry collaboration, partnerships, reducing regulation, or at least making it easy for regulation. I see Jay Paul, the CEO for Brampton Board of Trade, fiercely taking notes, so hopefully this is going all in the right direction. We've only got a couple more minutes left, but is there any questions from the audience that anyone would have at this time for any of the panelists here? You've got a mic coming to you quick.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So my name's Jay. Do you think that policymakers could support green innovation through policy? For example, plastic wastes are an issue because they take up valuable, scarce landfill space. So if, let's say, the provincial government works towards legislation or regulations that says like, hey, industry can only provide their resources or their products in plastics or packaging that can actually be recycled in the province. Do you think that would help innovation, or do you think that would make business more arduous for industry itself?
That's a very good question, and I have a really good example that's really driving a lot of our newly found business, and that's really a policy level change. So I'm sure you guys may have heard about PFAS chemical, the so-called forever chemicals that's used in plastics, in paper packaging. There is definitely ban is perhaps not the right word, but heavy restrictions coming in effect this year. So the industry that used to rely on PFAS are really scrambling for new ideas, new solutions, and that's really driving a lot of our existing business because we're precisely in that packaging industry. So for us, for the innovative startup that has a clean tech solution, right, policy does really drive a lot of the immediate really a lot of immediate value, a lot of tailwind for us. But on the flip side, if the regulations really come down too hard, too fast, and the innovative landscape is not ready yet, right, that is going to cause a lot of pain and headache for this established business. So like on balance, right, in regulation is very helpful as a driver, but you got to drive that fairly carefully. That'll be my experience.
Thank you. I mean, and that's all the time we've had here. You know, if you want to talk with any of these businesses, you know, they'll be here. If anyone wants to talk about Altitude Accelerator, if you're in a business helping you either move your business forward or you want to get introduced to any of the businesses that we have that are, and you can see great examples here that have come through Altitude, that, you know, happy to have that conversation. But overall, thank you to Brampton Board of Trade, and thank you to my fellow panelists, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Behdad, Aaron, Keith, all of you for your time. I really appreciate it. This is always a fun conversation for me because I'm not of your space, and so it's always super exciting. You know, whether we're talking about things like, you know, generative AI, you know, batteries coming from, you know, batteries using saltwater technology, nanotechnology inspired by crab shells. Like, this is all stuff that blows my mind and is really energizing and exciting. I love at a forum like this, in fact, that a couple of the technologies have this connection around sustainability and the ideas themselves having inspiration from nature or drawing from natural resources to come together, which I love. But the piece I always want to, you know, my takeaway when we have forums like this or panels like this is not just the big thinking and the exciting work that organizations like yourselves and individuals as founders yourselves are doing, but then where you always end up at the end of it, which is, you know, we're looking for partnerships. We're looking to build hubs. We're looking for collaborations. We're trying to specialize what we do, and we need other people to work with us alongside that. We need to find ways to ensure that our products perform at the same level or better than our competition out there. And fundamentally, that the choice between, you know, a green solution, a sustainable solution, and a more costly solution or a cost-effective solution is a false choice. That we have to be cost-effective. And so I love, no matter how big the thinking is, it always comes back to basic business stuff. It always comes back to the stuff that all of us are trying to solve in our organization. So I love you had this conversation, and Bryan, through your guidance, you know, ground it back to where we need it to be. So thank you, all of you, for this great conversation. I really appreciate it. Yeah. You mentioned the desire for more forums. You're right, I was taking notes. Pam, I trust you're taking notes. We will figure out ways to make more of these things happen. So thank you again for that. I'll give you a second to exit the stage. I've got a couple last closing remarks, but I'll let these gentlemen step off in the meantime. I do want to remind you, while they're exiting, if you appreciate the work that came about through this panel, once again, Pam shared at the beginning, the Altitude Accelerator is looking for input from industry, from community partners and others to help guide the work they're doing, ensure that the founders that they're supporting align with industry needs. So if you go back to the QR code and your online program, there is a code in there to take you to the survey that Pam was speaking to earlier today. She'd love your input for her team to make sure that they're delivering more great founders like the ones you heard from today. And with that, that sort of wraps up our day today. I think we covered a lot. We talked about, you know, sustainability and natural resources and how that drives our economy. We talked about the resources and that are available through the city of Brampton and some case studies in some businesses who are achieving their net zero targets. We had some amazing panels on how we can meet our energy demands and needs as we grow our economy. what we can do, what's driving energy policy, solutions and tools that are available to help you out in your day-to-day, and then, of course, wrapping up on the cutting edge and the invitation to be part and work with these companies who are driving the future of clean technology. So how did that feel? Did everyone's brains full? My brain is very full. Brian's right. I was taking lots of notes because my brain is overflowing, and I appreciate that. So with that, if I could get just one more round of applause and thank you to all our speakers, our moderators. A lot of prep went into the various discussions that you saw today. They didn't just roll in and share their brilliance with us, although they were all brilliant. There were prep calls, there were emails, there were a lot of chasing and herding of cats to make this happen. I was the primary cat that needed to be herded. But I just want to say thank you to all this. These don't come together without a lot of great support from great people. And I just want to drive home the through line through all those panels and discussions, and to me, the real epitome of what we try to do here at the Board of Trade. It was the need for collaboration, the need for immediate action, and the need, at government at all levels to be involved in the solutioning and moving this sector forward and moving all our sectors forward in a way that are sustainable. So bringing it back to where we started the conversation today, we're on the eve of an election. Please ensure you're voting. And think about some of the issues we were raising today if you haven't yet voted, and consider how we can move these agendas forward in a way that is, and I'm not telling you which party it is, but consider what's important to you out of the discussions we had today. I think our panelists shared some important perspectives when you consider how you're going to use that vote. And let us know at the Board of Trade how we can use our advocacy voice to help further these issues as well. With that, just a couple closing things. I just want to let people know, once again, thank you to the amazing sponsors who helped today happen. That's our host sponsor, Canon, the City of Brampton, Electra, Dynacare, Clorox, the Food Quotient. I hope you all had some food. The food was excellent. I'm seeing thumbs up. And of course, Livecast, thank you for keeping everything on point today. We appreciate all of you. So a round of applause for those folks. And the last couple things, I hope you had a good experience today. I know a number of you are not, regular members or attendees of stuff at the Board of Trade, and I hope we made a good impression upon you today and inspired you to want to get involved in future. And there's lots of ways you can do that. You can come out to our events, you can volunteer and get involved in our panels as speakers, but most of all, we'd love to have you join as members or sponsors and become part of what we're doing here at the Board of Trade, the work we're doing to raise awareness around issues in our community, bring our business community together, and really try to work collectively to achieve the goals that we'd all like to achieve in a manner that supports Brampton as a community as a whole. So if we've inspired you to do that, I hope we hear from you. We do have some events coming up, so there's a QR code there where you can learn more about getting involved with the Brampton Board of Trade. Our next big event, although we have some small stuff in between, is our annual Business Excellence Awards. There are a few nominees in the room with us today as well. This is our annual dinner where we bring together basically the best of Brampton business. We have award nominees in 10 different categories, our Business Person of the Year, a bunch of other stuff commemorating some great stuff and sharing some of the great stuff that's happening in Brampton. It's going to be a fantastic event. Sonia, our amazing event planner who has been put today together, after the minute we leave here today, it's all about the BEAs for the next 4 weeks, and we've got a big event planned for you. So if you have the time and want to connect with more business leaders, please make the time for that. And then finally, we've got the room. What we try to make sure we do is create the opportunity for connections. I hope you took advantage of that today. I hope you made some new friends while you were here today. We're in no rush to get kicked out of here. There's still some coffee left. There's still some snacks left. Take the time, make sure you connect with people before you leave. Make sure you visit I think there's a couple vendors still here. And then I do believe Canon is still offering some tours if you haven't had the opportunity yet to see this amazing facility. Amanda or someone from the team will be happy to take you around. And with that, thank you very much for being here today. One of the messages I heard very loud and clear was some amazing support for this event. We appreciate you being here. Obviously, we want more of these types of conversations to happen. That was the other message I heard a lot of today. We are not going to wait a year to have the next one of these conversations. We'll be reaching out to you. We're looking for input. There is a survey as well we'd love you to complete to tell us about this event, but also tell us what you'd like us to be doing around this conversation. We will be back this fall with some more conversation around this. We'll be reaching out to the various partners who are here today to help us develop some other, maybe some smaller forums, but more focused. But we want to know what you want from us, because this is a conversation I want to make sure that we're continuing. And with that, thank you very much for being here today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We appreciate you. Thank you.